Okay, so we will call this meeting to order. This is a subcommittee. This is the audit subcommittee of the Springfield City Council. It is now 4:03, February 13, 2023. And order to know, I will turn it over to you. I'm sorry, we're joined by Councilor Allen, who is on the audit subcommittee. I believe Councilor Davila is away for this particular subcommittee meeting. And so order to know, we'll let you get started.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Hurst, and the audit committee. Today, we'll be presenting two reports, one being the cybersecurity review at Springfield Police. But before
we continue, Councilor Hurst, I'm here also.
I'm sorry, Councilor Perez. I did not see you. We are also joined by Councilor Perez as well. My apologies. Thank you for joining us, Councilor.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Councilor. So as I was mentioning, the cybersecurity review report at the police department will be presented by Sean Goodwin from Wolf and Company. But before going into that report, which will be an executive session, I want to start off with the follow-up review report as city clerk, and that will start off in open session. So with that, I will share my screen if I'm able to. Share screen and show you the report. So everyone should see, it's called a follow-up report, cash handling audit, and bulk trash sticker review at city clerk. So, can everyone see that report?
Yes.
Okay. So with that said, I'll start off by saying, by indicating why we did this review. We did this review at the request of City Clerk Gladys Iola. She came on as the new city clerk and wanted to understand the deficiencies that we had initially recommended to the city clerk's office when we did the cash handling audit back in 2016 and the bulk trash sticker back in 2020. I want to thank Gladys for her appropriate tone at the top. She showed, I guess, the right message to her staff in conveying the importance of sound internal controls and wanting to improve her department. So the purpose of this review was to, one, follow up on the status of the recommendations we had made from these previous audits, and to identify additional findings and recommendations that we could make to the city clerk. So in these two reviews, we noted that there were 7 recommendations that were made. 6 were in progress and 1 was not implemented. So, and I'll start off with page 2 of the report, going into the recommendation that could be discussed in open session. So starting out with finding 2, it's pretty simple recommendation here. We had recommended that the city clerk update documenting its policies and procedures. And you have formal policies and procedures. They serve as a good baseline to convey management's expectations, responsibilities for its staff, and they serve as a good training manual for all of its employees. So we noted that some of the processes and procedures were documented, but they weren't completely documented. So that was still in progress in terms of the city clerk ensuring that all of their policies and procedures are updated and documented. And they are continuing to work on this. So moving on to the next finding and recommendation. We had initially made a recommendation about the payment data in Velocum for code violations to be reconciled in Munis. That is no longer applicable because the city clerk no longer uses Velocum. So we disregarded that finding and recommendation. Then moving on to page 4, finding 5. This is a common theme that we have with many departments when an employee has too many responsibilities. In particular, when an employee has conflicting responsibilities. A conflicting responsibility arises when a person's responsibility includes having access to cash or assets. At the same time, they have the ability to record accounting entries in the financial system. So we noted that there was an employee at the clerk's office that still had these conflicting responsibilities. They obtained checks at the same time. When they obtained the checks in the mailbox, they distributed these checks to the applicable clerks that were responsible for the billing. But at the same time, this mail person or this employee also processed or recorded the payments that they received for their area. So they recorded these checks into Munis. So that's a conflict. So we had recommended that someone else who doesn't have any responsibility over the financial entering or the financial records responsibility be involved. The city clerk is working on implementing that if she hasn't done so already. All right, so moving on to our review of the bulk trash sticker. So our first comment had to do with the bulk sticker activity was neither reconciled or monitored. So bulk citizens of Springfield can go to the city clerk to buy bulk trash sticker. If you have extra trash, or you can buy stickers to use to place extra trash out in your out with your trash, along with some bulk items. So people have to pay for these items, and they're numbered and sequentially. We noted that this the activity of the sale of bulk sticker was not tracked. So you want to track this. You want to know how many stickers you have on hand, how many you sold, and at the end of the day, how many stickers you have on hand, which you can verify by an inventory count. Without doing this reconciliation, you don't know if stickers, could go missing, get lost, or be misused. And there should be someone looking at this reconciliation regularly, just to make sure that things make sense. These stickers do have value, so that's why we're making such a recommendation. Moving on to the next item, under the new findings. Starting off with finding 1. The tenet of handling cash, especially as a cashier, is that you are responsible for your own till. No one has access to what your pot of cash. So you start off with your pot of cash, and you're responsible for it through the end until you close out your register. And no one should have access to your terminal or your register. So what we noted that is that cashiers, they go on break, right? They don't when they work during the day. But we noted that when they went on break, they left their cash register, open. That is, another cashier jumped on and used their cash register. So the danger in that is that what if something happens? What if cash goes missing? Then there's a lack of accountability as to who caused that discrepancy. So what we're recommending is that whenever a cashier goes on break or leaves their terminal, they sign out and take their cash till with them, and the new cashier comes in with their own till and logs in for better accountability. The next finding has to do with certificate paper used for birth and death certificates. They should be monitored and reconciled. So similar to your bulk trash sticker, these certificate paper are numbered and they're sequential. So the clerk's office should have a good idea of what they have on hand in terms of certificate papers, just to ensure that death certificates or birth certificates aren't being misused. Citizens go in and pay for these certificates. I think they're $20 a pop. So you want to make sure that none of this certificates aren't given away or are not misused or given away for free or and such. So when you do reconcile and monitor that information, you can identify discrepancies timely. The third recommendation has to do with data that maintained in auxiliary systems at City Clerk. So they have a separate databases for death, birth certificates, dog licenses, code violations. So I know for birth certificates and death certificates, they won't be able to reconcile that because City Clerk doesn't have visibility in terms of the total number of death certificates issued. But there's a compensating control with that when they reconcile or monitor the certificate paper. But for dog licenses and code V violations, they have access to data in these auxiliary systems, which they can, in terms of payment, when people pay for licenses and for code violations, they should track that information in these two systems against the information in Munis to ensure that they're in line. So any variances in the two systems should be researched and looked into just to make sure that there's no malfeasance or things going awry or missing. All right, so moving on to the next page. The fourth new finding has to do with Vital Check. So Vital Checks is used for primarily a merchant system where and online transactions. So we have issues with the merchant system. So it's not very efficient. So when people go and pay with a credit card for certain information like birth certificates or death certificates, the cashier has to input the price into the terminal. It doesn't automatically populate the price. So sometimes you could have mispunches when you're entering the price. So it's sort of inefficient. A lot of systems, when you scan in your credit card for item you want to purchase, the price is already automatically populated. Additionally, Vital Check has funds that they collect for their online transactions. In order for the city to receive those funds, a city clerk employee needs to initiate that transaction. So if a city employee forgets to initiate receiving those funds, the city never receives those funds. It just resides at Vital Check. So you got to make sure that city employees are on top of drawing down on the monies timely. Otherwise, the monies could just be sitting there. If you look into another system, the transfer or the settlement of these online transactions happens automatically. So we're recommending that the city clerk look into other systems, other merchant systems, to address some of these deficiencies that we noted. The fifth finding has to do with monitoring accounts receivable. So the city clerk bills like morgues for death certificates, and they have payments owed to the city clerk. So what we noted that as of April 30th, 2020, there were 109 customers that had balances over 40,000 greater than a year old. So there's a lot of, that's, not a lot of money, but it's a lot of customers. And some of these customers, I think 43 of these customers continued to receive payment, even though they had balances owed to the city clerk. So what we're recommending is the city clerk tighten up this policy by indicating the payment terms on the invoice due within 30 days and start aging the receivables. So for, how many, I guess you age them in buckets, amounts, being current, amounts being greater than 30 days, amounts being greater than 60, 90, 120, etc. And follow up on payment for those items that are delinquent, anything over 30 days. And they should also make sure that customers, if they want continue to receive services from the city clerk, then those outstanding balances get paid first. Additionally, we noted that city clerk used same invoice numbers on different invoices. So that's problematic because when a customer pays for an invoice, they will reference an invoice number. So if you're using the same invoice number, there could be a potential misapplication of payment for that particular customer. So the city clerk is tightening up these findings that we had made. And that is it for the open session. Before requesting to go into executive session, I want to see if there are any questions from the committee.
Are there any questions from the council, Tim or Maria, before we go into executive session?
What are we going into executive session for? Is it related to this or is it a different item?
Yeah, it's related to this. It's related to our follow-up review, but these findings that I'm going to talk about have security implications. So you do not want that out in the public because it provides a vulnerability to anyone that would want to do harm to the city or to this particular department.
And auditor, there's also the other audit report that you want to go into executive session for.
Yes.
There are two different items. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
But first, in executive session, we'll discuss what you just discussed with us only in executive session.
Right. So I'll discuss those findings that have security implications for city clerk. Then afterwards, I'll turn it over to Sean Goodwin from Wolf and Company. He'll discuss a different audit. It'll be the cybersecurity review at the police department.
Okay, that's good. All right. No, I don't have any questions here. I'll just save if I have any. I'll have them for executive session.
So what I don't want to do, Councilor Allen, is have us talk about things in executive session that we could have talked about in open session as they pertain to what he's just gone over, just so that the public can be privy to those questions that you have. So my recommendation would be that if we have any questions related to the information that Auditor No just went over, that we discuss those now.
Council, Chairperson.
Yeah, Councilor Perez.
Yes, could in the attachment A, new bills inform the customer that certificates will not be issued if outstanding invoice exists. So the new bills will be reflecting that information. That's what it means.
Yeah. So what we're recommending is that the new invoices have the payment terms like due within 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that city clerk enhance its policies to monitor the aging of its accounts receivable. Like anything that's beyond 30 days, they should follow up on with the customer saying, would you please remit payment because your invoice is past due?
If I could just clarify to the counselors, even though it's customers, the term customers is loosely, it's really honestly the customers that Auditor No is referring to in this section is like, for example, funeral homes. So any funeral home that receives death certificates that they purchase for any of their customers. We have some funeral homes that when we did this initial audit were in arrears to the city, probably for the last 5 years in the amount of $5,000. We had one that was in arrears in the amount of $15,000. And it was because they're basically they're billed. So they're requesting death certificates, they get them mailed to them, and then they get billed after the fact. And what we have done since the audit and the findings is at the bottom of each invoice say that it's due within 30 days because that was never put on any of the city council bills, so that for example, we invoice these funeral homes, they have to pay within the 30 days. And then we also made them aware that we did an audit and copied all of the bills that were outstanding going back to 2018. And if they could prove that they paid and find receipts of payment, then they didn't pay us. We've been able to recoup quite a bit of that money, and we're actually doing a search now till we can get specific amounts from each funeral home, but have been successful in getting that money paid back to us. And so going forward, we've let them know as of December 31st, 2022, that some of these funeral homes they're going to be on an as purchased basis. So if they're going to order something, they're not going to be billed anymore if they're still in arrears with us. Does that make sense? So it's not like someone coming in to purchase one birth certificate. It's a funeral home that's ordering 200, 300 death certificates a month.
Thank you.
So is that,
My question, thank you.
is that what you said? Is that pertaining to the item where it said some people, the $40,000 and the 109 people or whatever? Is that what that is about?
Yes, so those are typically funeral homes. Some of them are the fuel storage. So we have someone who has some fuel storage tanks and they receive a bill every year and the same bill number is used, just a different year is associated with it. So part of the tracking mechanism is to issue a different bill number, a different year, and also not print out a new certificate if they're in arrears.
So does that mean, Gladys, that a funeral home could have that situation with fuel storage and the same funeral home could have the same situation with death certificates?
Correct. So whatever the businesses may have, if they have have outstanding, whatever they owe the city clerk's office, if it's still outstanding, until they are able to, make us whole as an office, they're not going to be on a credit account with us any longer. Does that make sense? You're muted, Counselor, I believe.
All right, so is that preferential to you as the city clerk? Is that a better system for you?
I think it's a system that at one point, because in talking to him, I reached out to City Clerk Wilson, and I think he had instituted the same kind of rule, which is unless you're up to date with your payments, then he didn't issue anything on credit to either funeral homes or to any business. That was the three main offenders really were the funeral homes, anyone like a gas station, for example, that has the fuel storage, and then the parking lots. So any open air parking, the billing part of it seemed to slip through the cracks. So we kind of tighten that up a little bit so that we're getting it within the 30 days.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the council? Seeing none, order to know, did you want to go into executive session at this point in time, or was there anything that you wanted to add?
Sure, we can go to executive session, but Kathy, do we need to do anything before going into executive session? Do we make a roll call?
I'm gonna make a motion. I will make a motion if you have no further items for discussion in open session. Are you all set, order to know?
I'm all set.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the deployment of security personnel or devices and strategies with respect to such deployment pursuant to the open meeting law, Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A4, in connection with 1, a cybersecurity audit of the city's information technology network and systems conducted for the Springfield Police Department by the audit firm of Wolf and Company, including internal and external network vulnerabilities and critical security controls. And 2, a follow-up review related to the cash handling audit and bulk trash sticker review at the city's clerk's office conducted by the city's Office of Internal Audit, including critical security controls. The audit committee will reconvene in open session following the conclusion of this executive session. Can we have a second to that motion?
Counselor, excuse me, Kathy Breck from the Law Department. Does the committee want to go back into open session, or?
I do not. I do
Okay,
not. I
apologize.
That.
You could say will not. That's fine.
Okay.
You could just change it. Will not return.
And will not return. I'm sorry. The audit committee will not reconvene in open session following the conclusion of the executive session.
Great. Thanks.
I second
Can we have a second to that? Seconded by Councilor Allen. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Councilor Allen, if we could record you as a yes.
Yeah, we just need to do a roll call.
Do we need a roll? The only 2 people on the committee are myself and Councilor Allen, Ms. Bright.
I think you're good then.
And Councilor Allen, can you say yes?
I think he's muted.
Struggling with the mute button. Is there a different link to executive session?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we will leave this meeting, and if we could just record Councilor Allen as a yes, and we will go into executive session momentarily.